A very interesting profile that recently published in New York Magazine about the new First Lady, for those of us who live in New York, Chirlane McCray, married to Bill de Blasio. Really quite an extraordinarily interesting woman in her own right, a real activist and writer in her past, but also someone who talks pretty openly in this profile about her focus on motherhood. How did you react to that, Joanne?
I was completely horrified by the reaction to her saying that she had ambivalent feelings about motherhood at first, because I just think, aren't we beyond that? I mean, I just think it's horrendous that it said "bad mom" on the, on the post cover, and especially when you read the article in its entirety. There's so much there. What about the fact that she cared for her elderly mother and mother-in-law on a day in and day out basis, and her children, and her husband, and her, I just think it's shameful. And what did she say? That she didn't want to be with her infant daughter 24/7.
But that's really interesting, because that gets to the sort of expectation that women are there first and foremost to serve the home and the family. And any agitation about doing more is, at the expense of home and family, is looked askance upon. Whereas, there's no questioning that Bill de Blasio was putting his career first, and that was fine.
Well, I think it's also because this narrative, which had to have been written by men, doesn't take into account that there are ambivalences. I mean, I adore my children, but when my first daughter was born, it took me a couple of weeks to really feel like totally bonded. And I think that does not mean that I abandoned her or neglected her or didn't love her, but it was like a new feeling. And sometimes maybe people just have it immediately, and for other people it may take a tiny bit of time to grow.
My child's 2.5, and I found a lot of difficulty in the first year and a half. And I kept on telling people about it, and every time I felt like I was breaking a glass window. Like, people, new mothers that I was friends with and people I was talking to, wanted me to perpetuate this myth that this is the best thing in the world to happen to me, and I love every piece of it. And I think we're doing a big disservice to ourselves and also to our kids. Our kids know, I think, how we feel about things, and I think they're a lot better served if we admit we're human, we have other interests, we love them dearly, and that's a piece of ourselves, but there are other pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when it's your first, because you just don't really know. I mean, I do remember looking at her and saying, okay, like, we're in for a wild ride now, aren't we? We're going to kind of make this up as we go along.
I think there's probably a reason that kids don't remember anything until they're like 3.
Right. Well, if you didn't have ambivalence, then, like, what kind of mom would you be, honestly? I think, maybe I say it too often, but I say to my kids, Mommy has feelings too.
Yes.
Like, because I think it's really scary if you don't show your feelings. I think it would be a really scary apartment if I didn't show sadness, happiness, anger, silliness, whatever it is, because they would never know that it passes. And the ambivalence about how you're never going to feel ready. I can, at least in my book, you'll never feel ready to be a mom. But admitting that is like one step closer to being ready, I think.